Hi, my name is Gavin Binner, and I'm here to talk to you today about the disaster management apparatus in China. So, throughout its history, China has been one of the countries most affected by natural disasters. Of the world's top 10 worst natural disasters, 6 have occurred in China, including the top 3. Their main risks include flooding, heavy storms, earthquakes, and drought. And the 2008 Wenchuan earthquake was one of the more severe. It is the most devastating in the People's Republic of China's 59-year history. It's an 8.0 on the Richter scale, and the death toll was a little over 69,000, with direct economic losses coming in around $125 billion. China faced extreme disaster management difficulties because the most severely affected areas were mountainous, often with secondary effects occurring, including landslides, which destroyed roads, bridges, waterways, and telecommunications. And by May 27th, over 8,600 aftershocks had occurred following the earthquake. So let's talk about their implementation. They are a communist state and practice top-down approach with the national government determining the policy. After the 2008 earthquake, the Chinese premier took his jet to the disaster site in his capacity as the director of the headquarters for earthquake response, and established the working groups there based on his assessment. It is worth noting, though, that the Chinese government is attempting to decentralize, and following the 2008 earthquake, they've been creating more community-based disaster reduction centers, which include NGOs and public-private partnerships. By the end of 2012, there were over 1,200 such communities, and the government hopes to develop a total of 5,000 by the end of 2015. So the types of disasters, storms and floods are most common, each having occurred around 240 times since 1900, followed by earthquakes, which have occurred around 140 times in the same time period, and drought coming in at around 34 times in the same time period. The planning for this, the China Earthquake Administration reports to the State Council, which is China's chief administrative body. They're essentially in charge of all aspects of earthquake disaster mitigation, resistance, recovery, research, policy, implementation, education, and detection regarding earthquakes. The Ministry of Water Resources is similar to the CEA. It implements structural and non-structural measures. Flood control and drought relief headquarters have been set up in 6 major river basins: the Yangtze River, Yellow River, Huai River, Hai River, Songhua Basin, River Basin, and the Pearl River. Then there's the Ministry of Public Security, which includes fight against terrorist activities, control over traffic, fire, and dangerous objects, and it also oversees the protection of state-assigned venues and facilities. So let's talk about some of the participants. For the national government, you've got the National Institute of Emergency Management, which acts as basically the main educational institution for training future government officials. And they also do a lot of partnerships with NGOs. And the Emergency Management Office, there's a national, but there's also local offices, which provide citizens information regarding every type of potential disaster they might experience. You've also got activity by private business. This would include like construction companies for reconstruction, as well as construction of resilient structures. And then, individual companies that donate and facilitate operations or provide relevant services. Then you've got NGOs like the Red Cross Society of China, provide aid through many mediums similar to our Red Cross: blood donations, transportation casualties, refugee shelter, organ donation, etc. And then you've got the One Foundation, which is an NGO including over 300 domestic Chinese voluntary disaster response and rescue teams with approximately 5,000 individual members. Next, we're going to talk about some of the obstacles. One of the main obstacles is China's size, geographically, 3.75 million square miles, which is the third largest in the world. Due to this, the climate changes in various different regions of throughout China. It makes it very difficult to create and implement a singular comprehensive policy, considering the separate regions can have such drastically changing climates. Then you've got the population, which is an obstacle. Having the world's largest population at just over 1.3 billion people presents a large obstacle for dissemination of information, especially in rural areas. Also, the incredibly high population density in high-risk metropolitan areas. An example would include Shanghai, which has a population density of around 8,265 people per square kilometer, which can, as a coastal city, can result in very high casualty numbers. Also, China doesn't have much of a unified system. The large amount of land and people necessitates effective and efficient communication and coordination capabilities. And in order to accomplish its missions, China's definitely need to work on unifying all of its various organs and providing effective communication. As is typical of many nations, funding is also an issue. Many states have trouble with funding. In China, they have to increase their funding for early stages of disaster management, particularly research and sustainable and resilient construction projects. Fortunately for China, though, their form of government provides for high levels of autonomy and increased budgetary flexibility compared to many democratic nations. So China's disasters have definitely helped in shaping disaster management planning and policy. You can tell through the dedicated administrations that they have, the fact that the central government created specific administrations such as the Chinese Earthquake Administration and Ministry of Water Resources and placed them directly under the supreme administrative body of the government depicts how seriously these issues are viewed in light of China's natural disaster history. Similarly, the dedicated projects depict the problems the government gives priority to in policymaking. For example, the over 1,000 kilometer south to north project, which transports water from heavily precipitated areas to drier regions in the north, shows the significance that the government places on drought relief efforts. Also, the Yangtze River Dam project, which aims to prevent flooding while simultaneously generating hydroelectric power, also indicates the weight that past natural disasters have played in policy, though that project in particular is under some scrutiny. And then you've got the completer measures, which have already occurred, which indicate the effect past disasters may have had on policy considerations. Among these included the completion of 280,000 kilometers of embankment for flood defense, as well as 860,000 reservoirs and 97 key flood retention areas. So this was a very brief explanation of the Chinese disaster management apparatus. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I hope I didn't talk too fast that you couldn't understand me. And thank you very much for listening in with me. All right.